Welcome everyone to the VoiceBot webinar series. Our goal is to provide an ongoing educational resource for the voice industry. And we're pleased today to once again welcome Roger Kibbe from the Viv Labs group within Samsung. Roger is a senior developer evangelist, and he's focused on helping developers succeed on the newest entrant to the consumer voice assistant space, Samsung's Bixby. Now, you may be familiar with the previous webinar Roger did last month, and that was focused on an intro to Bixby. You can view the recording today at voicebot.ai/webinars. And so you can just select that, and you can see that whole presentation, which was about 30 minutes or so, and then we did 15 minutes of Q&A afterwards. So that might be good for those of you who missed the previous webinar to go to afterwards. But what Roger's talking about today will stand on its own, so you can just go ahead with us. We will also make this available as a recording afterwards, also at voicebot.ai webinars, so you don't have to worry about not having the slides or trying to write down furiously. You can really just focus on what Roger is presenting today. Our topic today is all about succeeding in the Bixby Marketplace. You know, I had the opportunity to interview Adam Chyer, again, while at Voice 19 recently in Newark. He's the co-founder and technical leader of both Siri, Apple Siri, and Bixby. So he has this track record of 2 major voice assistant launches over the past decade, really, and has been working in this space for 25 years. Aside from maybe some different focuses around features than the other consumer voice assistants, he also commented that with Bixby, his intent is really focused on helping developers drive discovery of their capsules, and that he had learned some things about how Alexa and Google Assistant had launched, you know, that influenced how they brought Bixby to market. And that's really our focus today. So I want to introduce Roger Kibbe. He's Senior Developer Evangelist with Bixby from Viv Labs and Samsung. Roger, would you like to take it away?
Thanks, Brett, and hello, everyone. Like Brett said, I'm a senior developer evangelist, and really my job is to go out and get third-party developers and companies interested and excited about building for Bixby. So today we're going to talk about the marketplace and capsules and how to succeed in the marketplace. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do. I'm at Roger Kibbe. And questions I will say that I don't answer today, I will, when I get them, I will address them on Twitter. I'll also be posting right after this, within an hour or so, a PDF of my presentation to my Twitter account. So let's follow each other, but even better, let's start a conversation there post this presentation. So let's get started.
Oh, hey, Roger, too. I forgot to say, everyone who's joining us, if you're not familiar with the Zoom interface, there is a Q&A feature. So if you do have questions, go ahead, enter those into the Q&A feature. We'll be putting those together in a sequence for Roger to answer after the presentation.
Okay, very briefly, what is Bixby? Brett really went over that. It's Samsung's voice conversational AI assistant. It's brand new, but it's not so new because, as Brett mentioned, you know, our co-founder, Adam Chyer, has been working in voice for 25 years. So new product, but with a deep pedigree and a lot of lessons learned around conversational AI and voice. But one thing I just briefly wanted to mention is the opportunity of Samsung really starts with our massive reach. We're the biggest smartphone manufacturer in the world. We're the biggest telephone manufacturer in the world. We're the biggest appliance manufacturer in the United States. 70% of US households have a Samsung device. And our Herman subsidiary has a very large presence in portable speakers and automotive. So what does that all mean? It means by starting in 2020, next year, we'll be shipping 500 million Bixby-enabled devices per year. It's everything from a phone, to a watch, to speakers, to appliances, TVs, tablets, and even more devices that we haven't revealed yet. So there's a massive market opportunity with Samsung Bixby. Okay, so I'm gonna give this a shot. I'm actually gonna give you a live demo of the marketplace, but bear with me because this is definitely live. And if it starts blowing up, I have a backup video, but let's give this a shot. So I'm gonna go to I'm mirroring my phone on screen right now. Oops, just went to sleep. So if I want to start the marketplace, what I do is press the Bixby button, and that goes to the Bixby homepage. And if I swipe right from there, this is the Bixby Marketplace. So up top here are some featured capsules that you can swipe through and enable. Below that are staff picks. This rotates about weekly. So this is this week's staff picks of capsules. And below that is new and trending. So this would be capsules that are recently released that are getting some serious traction. I'm going to come back here and enable a couple of these and show you how that works. And then if you scroll down, we have categories or popular categories you can view all. So for instance, if I go into games and fun, which is always a popular place for voice applications, you can see the different capsules that are in games and fun there. Or another popular place is education and reference. So lots of capsules there that you can enable. But let's go show you how to enable a capsule. And I'm going to do that out of new and trending. So in new and trending, so sleep sounds. So if you're familiar with Nick Schwab in Invoked Apps, yes, that has come to Bixby. And so this is a bunch of relaxing sleep sounds that are very, very popular in voice assistants there. The way it works is you can say, these are example phrases to get the capsule actually up and running with Bixby. There's an about, which you can expand. And then at the bottom, there's reviews there. Okay. And the way I would add, so this is already, you see that button that says remove at the top with sleep sounds? Whoops. Let me remove it. So I'm going to remove it. So if I came in here and hadn't enabled this, I would see that add button. And I'd simply click add. And then that capsule would be available to Bixby. So I want to show you one more, and I'm actually going to run it live. Well, let's remove that too. So this is a capsule called Senior Workout. And one of the reasons I want to highlight this is the result of, we did a series of hackathons, 4 different hackathons over the summer. And there was an award for best capsule that came out of those hackathons. And the best capsule that came out of those hackathons was Senior Workout. And indeed, they were able to come up on stage and get an award from Adam Shire at Voice Summit last week. So, or the week before last. Oops. So let's go and try and actually use Senior Workout and enable this. Ask Senior Workout to start an easy workout. Oops. Of course, this didn't work. Let me try it one more time. Ask Senior Workout to start an easy workout. Okay. Oh, I hadn't added it. Helps when you add something. See, this is definitely a live demo when things aren't working. Ask Senior Workout to start an easy workout. So one of the reasons we really like this capsule is it's really simple, but really it's all about different exercises, and really geared towards senior citizens, although anyone could benefit from these exercises. We just thought it was an example of something really simple that was super well done. Okay, so I'm going to jump out of that and jump back to my presentation. And that was my backup video. So I want to talk about how to create a great Bixby capsule. When I say a great Bixby capsule, what I'm really talking about is something that will be compelling for end users, users of Samsung devices, to go and enable your capsule using that marketplace that I just showed you, and then enjoy using your capsule. So first thing I want to talk about is building a multimodal experience. Bixby is inherently multimodal. This is quite different versus some of our competition, in that if you look at those 500 million devices that are going to ship a year on that previous slide, most of those devices have screens. So I can't give you an exact breakdown, but you can assume that most Bixby-enabled devices actually have screens on them. So you want to definitely build a multimodal experience because users are expecting that. So this is a screenshot from the Yelp capsule. And there's really three components there: dialogue, view, and extras, or follow-on actions. I'm going to talk about each of those three in turn. So the first thing is the top of the screen. That's that header at the top of the screen. And this is text that you, there's a little sample code there. When you see that template, this is header text. So if I put that in my Bixby model at the top of the screen, it would say this is header text, but it's also spoken. Now, by default, what's spoken is the same as that header text up top, but you can change that and make the header text say one thing and what's spoken say something different. Definitely something to think about and consider when you're designing your capsule. It really depends on the complexity and what your capsule does. But oftentimes successful capsules, what is said via voice versus what's in that header is something a little different. Just a side note is that SSML support is rolling out right now. We just have a few tags, but we'll have far more tags rolling out over the next month or two to really give that rich speech capabilities that SSML enables. Okay, onto the view and the UI, and that's that middle part of the screen. So this screenshot is actually of output, but I want to talk about input. So something that's unique to Bixby in the voice assistant world is that input can either be via voice or actually forms on there. So very akin to like what you might see on a web app or a mobile app. You can put input forms in there. So text, number fields, toggles, sliders, image pickers, date or time pickers. So the user has the option of either using voice as an input modality or using the screen and actually typing or clicking there. So two different ways to provide input. And, you know, depending on your capsule, but often the best practice would be allow the user to choose. Is it something where voice is the most appropriate way to provide that input? Or is it something where they'd like to be able to type it or swipe it or tap it? With Bixby, you should enable both. One thing about input fields is that you can have an input field. You can have, for instance, have an address input field that has multiple fields on the form. So think of this very similar, like I said, to maybe a web input form, but it's all voice enabled. So you can also use voice to enable that. There's a lot of capabilities here. I have some example code. That's the input forms capsule, and I have that link at the bottom of the screen. The capsule samples collection is basically a recipe book of a bunch of simple capsules that do particular things. So inside the capsule samples collection on GitHub, there are probably 13, 14, I lose track because it's added to fairly quickly, number of capsules, and they all do something differently. If you want to understand input forms, one of the best ways to do that is download and run that input forms capsule in the Bixby IDE, and you understand some of the capabilities that are available. Okay, the flip side is the output, and actually that's where this screenshot is an accurate rendition. So that would be an output of, in this case, a search for restaurants. And this uses what we call Bixby view components. So cards, images, cells, maps, titles, boxes, and there's more, and combinations and all of the above. So you can build a pretty rich UI. I mean, I think one of the reasons they use the Yelp UI is I think they've done a really good, in the Yelp capsule, good use of UI and showing a rich UI there that people can interact with or interact with via voice. And once again, for this Bixby views, which is that output, that UI, there's some sample code. I have the link down there to the samples collection, and it's just a different capsule inside of that samples collection. Okay, and then the last thing on the UI is that bottom section. This is optional. These are these little suggestion boxes that really prompt the user about what they can do next. So for instance, if I was building a restaurant reservation capsule and I was seeing details about that restaurant in the UI, maybe I'd have a button at the bottom that said reserve. If my capsule is a game and the game it finishes, I might have a play again button. We also have yes or no buttons. We treat those a little bit separately, not in the UI, but developer-wise, and that's why I call out it being a little bit different here. So what is that text at the bottom? So if I click, for instance, if I have a game and I click play again, that's the exact same thing as the user saying play again. So when you see play again at the bottom of the screen, you click it, or if I said play again, it's the exact same thing to Bixby. So you would want your natural language training to understand what play again meant, and then it would work both with the button or if the user said that. Okay, hands and eye free. So to explain this, Bixby really runs in two modes. One is a pure UI mode with the assumption that the user has a screen in front of them that they can interact with. And the second one is what we call HEF, or hands and eye free, with the assumption that the user is voice only. So, you know, you can think about this even on a phone, right? So right now, if I pick up my phone, I am in UI, could see the screen, I'd be in UI mode. But if I stick my phone in my car or it's sitting over on the desk and I say, let me turn my phone over so it doesn't respond to this. Hi, Bixby. Then I would be in hands-free mode. So hi, Bixby. See, if you enable Bixby via voice, e.g. hi, Bixby, you're in hands and eye-free mode. If I enable Bixby via the Bixby button, then I'm in UI mode. And those react, you can do different things there. So there's this expression language, and I'm not going to get into how to develop that, but there's this $ hands-free variable. And you can determine, is the user in that UI only mode or hands and eye free mode? And you very well may want to vary the experience. Clearly, if you're in HEF mode, you want to make sure that everything is enabled via voice and you describe everything with voice. However, if you're in UI mode, you may want to be, a little bit more brevity in what you say voice-wise, and allow the UI to present some of that information to the user. It's up to you how you design your capsule, but you have this capability and something to definitely consider. The last thing I want to talk about is hands-free list navigation. And so what we're trying to do here is one of the challenges in voice is in a traditional UI, I can have, say, a pull down with 8 items and the user can select one of the 8 items and it works great. But if I presented all 8 of those items via voice, it would just feel like my voice assistant was droning on and on and on. So what hands-free list navigation lets you do is enable Bixby to behave like this. Would you like selection 1, selection 2, selection 3, or would you like to hear more? So you could choose selection 1, 2, or 3. If you said hear more, then Bixby would say, would you like selection 4, selection 5, selection 6? If I said more and I had 8, it'd be selection 7 and 8 on the last screen. So really think about it. You think about in a traditional UI, you can page through results. Think about this as voice paging. And this is a way to present a multitude of choices to a user in a voice digestible way. So definitely something powerful and definitely something you want to take advantage of. There's a lot of options there. It's pretty well documented, but take a look at the docs to understand that better. Continuations and relaxations. So these are all about how to enable Bixby to understand more natural conversation and how Bixby maintains context. So the example here I have is an example of, say, a recipe finder capsule. And I say, hi, Bixby, what should I cook for dinner tonight? And Bixby shows some dinner recipes. And then I say, show me some Italian ones. And what you're doing there is modifying that previous, so I want Italian dinner recipes. So what Bixby would do automatically is rerun your search code with Italian as a modifier. Now, how about if I said, show me Mexican ones instead? We all know as humans, what we're saying is, I don't want to see Italian dinner recipes. I want to see Mexican dinner recipes. And that is what Bixby calls a continuation. And so we'll replace Italian with Mexican and then re-execute that search code automatically for you. I can add another modifier on the right-hand side with sausage and onions. So now I'm getting even more specific in my recipe search, and that's another continuation. And then at the last one, I add an additional modifier without gluten. So I want pretty specific. What happens here is Bixby finds no results, but you can mark these up as what's called a relaxation. What a relaxation means is if I execute a search and I find no results, then start relaxing the search criteria. So in this example, what it's done is the last search criteria added was without gluten. And before that, it got results. So it drops the without gluten, tells the user that, and shows the previous results. So pretty powerful, this combination of continuations and being contextually aware and understanding the way we might all naturally speak and modify what we previously said. And then this idea of relaxations, if I get too specific, Bixby can automatically back up and re-execute the query. One of the beauties of this isn't code-driven. So Bixby is all built upon modeling, and you model this and modeling your natural language model. This is a continuation. You mark things up as the allowing relaxations, and then Bixby automatically handles this for you. So definitely something to think about in your capsules. Personalization. So when I think about personalization, I think it's really just about magically making an application work better. You know, make it know me. There's two types of personalization in Bixby. One is preference learning. So this is remembering my preferences based on behavior and context. Briefly, the example I always give there is if I did a train travel schedule capsule. So I could say, when is the next train from station A to station B? Well, every morning I go from my home station to my workstation. And every evening I travel from my workstation to my home station. So if we enable preference learning around when is the next train from station A to station B, eventually I could just ask Bixby, when is the next train? And it would know, hey, contextually, it's the morning, so I want home station to workstation. Or in the evening, it would contextually know, hey, it's the evening, and I always ask for work to home. And it'll automatically make those smart choices for my preferences there. Selection learning, kind of the sister of preference learning. Learning selections made by you or all users, it's contextually aware. Simple example here is if I say Springfield as a city, there are 41 cities in the United States named Springfield. Let's say, but I really want to talk about Springfield, Illinois, which I always bring up because that's where my father was born. Then once Bixby understands that when I say city, I say Springfield. When I say Springfield, I mean Springfield, Illinois. It'll learn that. You also can look at the behavior of other users. In this case, you might want to do some geotagging around that. So users are nearby typically chose Springfield, Illinois, and so Bixby can get smart. So to better understand this, I have a link down there. So a colleague of mine wrote a really good article about personalization, how to use it, how it works in Bixby, how to enable it. I'd suggest you would take a look at that article. It gives you a high-level brief overview and then some sample code to get you started with personalization. Okay, library capsules. So these are all about using built-in functionality that we've already built to make it easier for you to create an engaging capsule experience. I'm just gonna go over, there's at least a dozen of them. I'm gonna go over a few that are used often and are high value. So first one is Viv Contact and Viv Self. If you want to access to the user's contact information, their location, or their address book, you would use these. Now, if you use these, Bixby is going to prompt when you start your capsule and say, hey, this capsule wants access to your location or your address book, and the user has to opt into that. So these are opt-in capabilities, but definitely valuable. Viv Time is a bunch of date time utilities. What's really useful is the date time expression in your natural language training. If you use that, then you can start saying things like next week or next Wednesday, or Christmas 2030 or next Easter. And what Bixby will do, so for instance, if I said next week, and I use a date time expression in my natural language training there, then Bixby, I can go get and figure out what next week is. That's a date time interval. There's a start date, which would be this Sunday, and there's an end date, which would be then the next following Saturday, and Bixby will parse that out for you. So really a way to let users speak around date and time in a natural way. Viv Geo, geographical structures. What's really useful there is search terms. So once again, in your natural language training, if you use search terms, I can do things, say things like the Empire State Building or the Golden Gate Bridge. And Bixby will understand the Empire State Building, what the address of that building is, or the Golden Gate Bridge, what is geo-Latin long is. And so users can use landmarks in geographical search capabilities you want in your capsule. The other thing you can do with search term is if you put it in on the UI, on an inform element, then you can start getting autofill, autocomplete of an address. So as the user starts typing in an address, Bixby will start enabling autocomplete of that address. And then lastly, Viv Maps. So we have good integration with Google Maps. If you want to integrate with Maps, use Viv Maps. There's a bunch more of library capsules. I have the link at the bottom there. Definitely take a look. Like I said, this is going to just add a bunch of capabilities, which would be typically pretty darn hard to code yourself. Use the code that we've written to make it easier and better to build some advanced capabilities in your capsule. Okay, I want to show you this video. If you were at Voice Summit, you saw this video, so you'll have to pardon with me. I'm going to show it and I'm going to explain why this is important.
Let's take a look at how the new Bixby Marketplace works. To launch the marketplace, open Bixby.
So bear with me, but there's a little bit of overview of the marketplace. We'll get into the meat soon.
Scroll down and you can see those trending capsules, staff picks, and then a list of popular categories. Let's view all of the categories. And you know, I'm interested in rideshare, so let's see what's under travel and transportation. Oh, that's amazing. Both Lyft and Uber are available. So let me go to Lyft, and I'm going to add that to Bixby. And then let me go to Uber, and I'm going to add that to Bixby. And now I've added both Uber and Lyft to Bixby. Okay, now I need a ride to the airport. Let's try. Hi, Bixby. I need a ride to the airport.
Which service do you want to use?
And because I enabled both Lyft and Uber, Bixby is asking me which one I want to use. For today, let's use Uber. Uber.
An UberX car to San Francisco at the airport. San Francisco will be about $48. The closest driver is 2 minutes away. Ready to book your ride?
So now I can book my ride on Uber. Now, as you notice, Bixby asked me, do I want to use Uber or Lyft? Let's say I have a preferred ride-sharing company. How do I set that? Let's go see. So go back in here, and I go into my Bixby settings, and I go down to preferred capsules. And as you can see at rideshare at the bottom, it says always ask, but I could set it to Uber, or I could set it to Lyft. Now that I've set it to Lyft, let's try that again. Hi, Bixby. I need a ride to the airport.
Where would you like to get dropped off?
And you can see it automatically launched Lyft. So I've made Lyft my default rideshare application. But if I want to take an Uber, I just ask for it. Get me an Uber to the airport. And voila, you can see Uber comes up and I can book my Uber ride.
Okay, the reason I wanted to show this was two things. One, so both Uber and Lyft are both third-party capsules. But if you noticed, all I was saying is get me a ride to the airport. I wasn't saying ask Uber or ask Lyft or open Lyft and ask for that. So what this means is there's no name dispatch here, or invocation name is used in other, for other voice platforms. And this is the future with Bixby. So what we've done here is these are in a natural language category called rideshare. And there is a whole vocabulary around that natural language category, rideshare. And if you wrote a capsule, if you wrote right now, if you were a rideshare company, you wrote a capsule and you supported all the vocabulary, then you could be what we call a default for that category. And what that would mean is if I enabled it, I could, you'd get that choice. So you saw Uber and Lyft, and there would be a third one for yours. Or you could select that as a default, and then I could just say, get me a ride to the airport. We're going to be enabling, we only have this enabled for a few natural language categories today, but we're going to be enabling this for many, many more. And the whole idea here is to get away from name dispatch or invocation names and let a third-party capsule directly respond to the user when they ask the voice assistant something directly. I think this is a really different approach. You know, we truly do believe that we're building a great platform, but who's going to build a great voice assistant is all of you. So we'd actually like you to go and build capsules that are better than the native built-in capabilities that we build internally. We think you're better at it. And then when we roll out all these natural language category vocabularies, you can become the default and answer that for the question, for the user. So really, I know and I'll just use a little terminology, Brett of VoiceBot often talks about 1P and 3P capsules. We're really saying any capsule, a third-party developer, can build what's essentially a 1P capsule. This is coming. It's pretty limited right now, but I'm giving you a view into the future and something we're really excited about enabling. Okay, content. I can't say that enough. You know, I truly believe that if you are sweating the content, and that's the hard part about building your voice application, your capsule, then something is going right. Because what makes great capsules is a lot of great content. Generally, content should be the hard part. You know, code something amazing, but then you got to create great content. I have seen voice applications, both Capsules for Bixby and other platforms. I'm like, wow, that was an amazing amount of development that went into it. But then it seemed like they made less effort on the content and it's just not a compelling experience. So, point being made, spend a lot of time or energy on content. Okay, so those are kind of some considerations that you need to think, some technologies you should think about enabling or using in your capsule to make a great Bixby experience. I want to also talk to you about how to prepare your capsule for the marketplace. So let's jump in, and I just have some practical tips here. And these are based upon you know, the early submissions we've had to the marketplace and what we've seen and what works and what hasn't worked so well. Some of these may seem obvious, but bear with me because we had a fair amount of submissions who missed some of these kind of what are obvious things, I hope. So follow the guidelines for the metadata. So there's a couple files that you need to put the metadata in, make sure it's in there. That metadata is what drives the marketplace. So you saw that marketplace UI, both in that video and the live demo there. All of that UI is driven by that metadata. So make sure you read those guidelines and most importantly, include that metadata in there. Dispatch name and aliases. So dispatch name is the name that the user will use to start your capsule. Definitely follow the guidelines there. I know there's been, if you've done this already, there's been a little bit of moving goalposts there, but I think we got it nailed now. And aliases are ways to provide, so sometimes you may have a dispatch name, the ASR may interpret slightly differently. So what aliases are is to create an alias for your dispatch name or something that's really semantically identical. So not something that broadens the scope or is different. It's not a search term. It's a way for the user to ask for your capsule, and maybe they phrase it slightly differently, and it still works. Make sure your hints are there, and make sure they well with that dispatch name. Spend time in the description. Actually, spend time in everything. Spend time in the description, the icon, everything. Like I said, I mean, this is your presence in the marketplace. End users will go, they'll see all those capsules, something with an engaging icon, a good description, all that metadata in place, hints that make sense to them, they will enable and try. Something without that may be an amazing capsule, but will just get less audience because it just doesn't seem as compelling. So net, spend time here. Okay, so I repeated this 3 times. I think this is so important. Test your dispatch name and utterances. Test your dispatch name and utterances, and repeat. So your dispatch name, so choose it wisely. Choose it for something that works, that the ASR understands, the name that users are going to use to start your capsule. When you're thinking about potential dispatch names, I like to use this website called rhymezone.com. I have the link there. And they have this capability to find similar sounding words. And if you go there and there is phrases or words that are similar sounding, what you think your dispatch name is going to be, I can guarantee that an ASR is going to be challenged there. So this is super useful. And then test all your utterances, especially hints, and make sure they work. So this is just, I mean, you know, we all know as software developers, QA is so important. I think in voice, it's just doubly important to test with your voice, your dispatch names and your utterances, and make sure they work. Yes, you can test them in the simulator, but you should also definitely test them on device and make sure they work. Okay, and this is my final presentation slide. And it's just a call to action for all of you. So I want you to think beyond the smart speaker. And what do I mean by that? So I think in the voice industry, it's been dominated. We're in the smart speaker era right now. But I think we're moving to post-smart speaker. We're putting voice assistants in TVs. We're putting them in appliances. We're putting them in your watch. We're putting them in non-smart speaker devices. And I do believe that what we built today has been somewhat limited by smart speaker thinking. So I encourage you to think beyond the smart speaker. So for instance, the TV, I think there's a really compelling use case for voice enabling a TV. And really, you know, we've been talking about interactive TV for probably 15 or 20 years. It has never quite worked. I think you'd probably unlock it, actually make it work with voice. So just a call to action to don't be limited to what a smart speaker can do. Think above and beyond that smart speaker and what a great voice experience would be for all these other devices with voice enabled in them. Okay, so that's it for my presentation. Jump into questions in a second. Once again, my name is Roger Kibbe. I'm a senior developer evangelist. I'm going to post the PDF to this literally within an hour after we're done with Q&A to my Twitter. So follow me, but even better, let's get into a conversation, talk about voice assistants, what you see, what's interesting, what's exciting. And with that, I think we'll open it up to questions.
Yes, Roger, we do have a number of questions. So listeners, I'm Brett Kinsella, editor of voicebot.ai. So I was the one who did the intro. And I'm going to walk Roger through some of the questions that have come in. And you mentioned this towards the end of your presentation, Roger, but I want to put a fine point on it. There's a question that came in that says, is there something like implicit discovery? So recommending my capsule even when the user doesn't know it exists. How does that work on Bixby today?
Yeah, so that's going to be enabled via, when I shared that Lyft and Uber capability. There's a little bit, the implicit discovery, the way it works with Alexa today is you ask something, Alexa doesn't know how to answer it. And if you can fulfill intent, if my memory serves me, implemented that, they'll say, do you want this skill? to answer that. We're actually skipping that and jumping straight to, you'll be able to ask that, and your capsule will answer that directly when we get that, that vocabulary built out for all those different natural language categories. So short answer is not today, but I think something even better is coming in the future.
Right. And so from the perspective of what you presented, there is explicit discovery, and then there's some personalization where you can select things that you've enabled, essentially, right? But the implicit is coming, and that'll be, and then you haven't discussed, like, if there's multiple potential solutions in a domain, how you'll answer that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, if there's multiple solutions, so look at the rideshare example. Both Lyft and Uber compete. They do the same thing. So if you looked at that video, when you and I said, I need a ride to the airport, it said, which service do you want to use? So if there was multiple that were in a category, that a user that can answer that question, then Bixby to ask, which one do you want to use? And I also went in and enabled the default one. So it's very much like the best analogy I know is anyone who uses an Android phone knows that if, for instance, I download 2 different map applications, and the first time I try to open a map, it says, well, which app do you want to use? And you can keep on choosing one, or you can choose the default one. We're going to use that same pattern, but with voice.
Great. Okay. So we had a related question that said, do you need to enable a capsule before using it? Could you just clarify that?
You do.
Okay. So for a user to access any of these capsules, you need to go through this enablement process. So that's important for how people promote their capsules, correct?
It is. And if you saw when I did the live demo, I think I forgot to enable. I didn't have the senior workout capsule enabled. And so it didn't work, and I had to go back and enable it. But yes, that is an important process.
Okay, great. There's another question here. It's about the marketplace, and it's about monetization. So given that it's called a marketplace, does that mean that developers will be able to charge users for any aspect of the capsules that they develop?
So I'm going to say stay tuned, and I'm going to say that we are well aware of what our competition does there. And we think that that is a very viable pattern to follow and enable, both around, so the idea of in-capsule purchasing is coming. And then we're thinking about other interesting ways to monetize that I can't reveal yet, but will definitely mimic what's out there, and that is coming in the nearish future, I'll say.
You're welcome to make news here in front of this live audience, if you'd like. Okay. Well,
nearish future.
Yeah, we won't get you into too much trouble here. A related question around monetization is a question related to like a rewards program.
Uh-huh.
So, and this is specifically, Alexa has a rewards program where they will pay top developers of Alexa skills. They'll share some out of a pool, they share some proceeds. Has Samsung announced anything around that for Bixby to date?
No. Their ideas like that are in consideration. I will say, just stay tuned on the monetization. Stay tuned. I think there's going to be some interesting options available, but it is not available yet.
Okay. That's great. And so then there's another question around developer swag program for developers who successfully publish capsules. What are the plans or what's available today along those lines?
Okay. So I'm getting a general gist of these questions. I'm going to have to say stay tuned for that. Absolutely. I mean, absolutely some kind of, so we gave away, so if you came to one of our hackathons, we were giving away TVs and tablets and earbuds, a couple TVs each one. So let's say, put it this way, we have a lot of cool Samsung stuff to give away. So we have plans to have contests. I think the big things to give away, like TVs, would be more in-person events. but we're definitely planning some future contests or plans where everybody who submits a capsule gets something.
So where do the developers find out about the hackathons, these in-person contests?
Yeah, so go to bixbydevelopers.com. So that's where you go today. And you would download the IDE, and that's where all of our documentation is. And you will, in order to use Bixby, you actually need to sign up for a Samsung developer account in order to use the IDE, because it syncs everything to the cloud, and that becomes your own account. And then I believe if you opt in, you'll get an email, but we'd also announce it on bixbydevelopers.com.
Okay, excellent. All right, so we have several questions about Samsung devices. So which devices are currently enabled? How many are available in the market today? How many will be available 6 months from now? This is something you talked about very briefly in the beginning, around 500 million per year, but I think there's some question about, today, how big is the reach and how rapidly is that growing, I think is the best way to summarize at least a half dozen questions along those lines.
Sure. Okay, so today, Bixby is enabled on the S8, S8 series and Note 8, the S9 series and Note 9 series, and the S10, and well, everybody knows there's a Note 10 going to be announced in a couple days. So.
Oh, you are making news.
No, I'm not making news there. That's you can go and pre-order one on Samsung.com. So I'm not making news there. So those are all devices that not only have Bixby enabled, but also have the marketplace enabled. So you can go in the marketplace enables and run those on the phone. You can also run those on tablets. It is the S4 or the S5e, and we just announced a new tablet last week, the S6, kind of the successor to the S4. So the tablets, and those would be marketplace enabled. What has Bixby enabled but not a marketplace yet would be TVs. So we're starting with the higher end TVs. So any of the 2019 QLED TVs, you'd have to check. I don't know the exact models that have the Bixby enabled. And then smartwatches. So we just announced that Bixby, when I say Bixby, I mean Bixby 2, which is the one that will be, which is the Viv Labs enabled one that you can develop for, is on the Galaxy Active. And we just announced new Galaxy Actives yesterday. And then there's the Galaxy Gear. Sorry, my Bixby is going off as I talk about it. The Galaxy Gear smartwatches, it's coming to them, not yet. Appliances, it is coming to the fridges. So coming, really all the phones, all the tablets, fully Bixby and marketplace enabled, watches, TVs, Bixby enabled, not marketplace, coming to the other devices. We don't actually reveal numbers other than that 500 million that will ship per year starting next year. But you can extrapolate numbers, and there's well over 100 million devices out there that are Bixby enabled right now.
Okay, good answer. How do brands register their trademarks to prevent unauthorized people from releasing capsules?
Really great question. So when you're that invocation name, so one of our rules is we won't allow trademark terms. So we actually do a check on a trademark. Obviously, if something slips through, right? We'll take care of that immediately. But yeah, so those invocation names with brands would be reserved for brands. Everybody require 2-word invocation names or dispatch names, except for a brand. If you have the trademark, you can have one name there. So you can say, well, Yelp has built it, but you can say open Yelp or talk to Yelp.
So you do allow 1-word dispatch names, invocation names, if it's a brand.
If it's a brand. And if it's a brand, sometimes an ASR needs to be trained. if a brand name is not an English word.
Or one syllable.
Or one syllable, or one of those, people can be creative, pretty creative there. And so that causes a little bit, we need to do a little bit of work internally, but we'll take care of that and make that work. So we're definitely, brand friendly. We want brands on Bixby, and we'll protect your trademarks and make your brand work well on it.
Okay, great. So I have another question here about the demonstration that you did. And the question goes, if I consistently ask for Lyft, will Bixby eventually just pick Lyft without me explicitly selecting it?
Well, that sounds like a cool feature, actually. So that's not currently enabled, but I'm going to take that a note as that would be an interesting use of personalization, and just be smart enough to.
I'm sure Adam has already talked about this. In fact, I think I talked to Adam about this on one of my podcast interviews. Yeah. So the point is, to answer that question, that's not enabled today. You would need to select that in your personalization feature, but that's something that, based on how Bixby learns, you might see in the future at some point.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly consistent with the way we view how personalization should work.
Okay, great. There's a question here about the library modules. So you spent a little time talking about those. How often are those updated?
Frequently. Very frequently. Sometimes too frequently.
So let me ask a clarifying question. Is that actually updating the library entry itself, or adding new library modules?
Usually updating the library entry itself instead of adding new ones, and tweaking and fixing it. One thing about our platform that we're doing, we iterate very quickly. There's a lot of releases. I think that's both a curse and a blessing. Generally a blessing, because we fix things fast. The only reason I say a curse is sometimes it can be hard to keep up. And we're working on providing better documentation and release notes about our features. Anybody who's been working with Bixby for a while knows what I'm talking about, right? You go start something, and a couple weeks later, there's a new release, and we've enhanced capabilities there. So it's part of our ethos is to work fast, get something up and running, and build this platform. I think as it matures, maybe some of those releases will slow down. But I think we definitely are the philosophy of get the features out fast and quickly, let people enable them. And if they're not perfect, then go fix them. Very much a kind of a Silicon Valley approach to software.
Okay, so we're coming to the end of our time, but I did want to ask this one last question. And it comes from, obviously, a developer, because they developed a popular Alexa skill and wanted to know if you have any incentives or programs for current voice app developers to join Bixby.
We do. So we have something called the Bixby Premier Developers Program. So if you go to bixby.partners, that URL, you can go. So what we're looking for there is people who've had some pretty good success on their Alexa skill or their Google action. And that is our partner program for small independent developers. And there's a bunch of benefits there. We'll give you, extra hand-holding from Evangelist like myself and developer support. We have loaner devices available. There's some exclusive webinars. There's some other benefits that are there. So if you've built something and been successful on Alexa and Google, go to bixby.partners. I'd encourage you to do that soon. We have a limited number of people we're going to allow in this year, and we're getting near that max. So go and apply there, and that's where we would give you incentives and helps and show you how to port your, say, your Alexa skill to a Bixby capsule, how to Bixbyify it, and make it a great experience for Bixby users.
You might need to come up with a better term than Bixbyify, but
you're right.
I'll send you back to work on that. Your next webinar, that's your job, to come up with a new.
Okay, well, that's why I don't work purely in marketing.
Fair enough. Okay, Roger Kibbe. So listeners out there, people who have been watching this webinar, check out at Roger Kibbe. He's going to answer some of the additional questions we didn't get to. I think we got through like 15. different questions, but there's definitely more here. He's going to be on Twitter answering some of those additional questions, as well as clarifying some of the ones that he did mention, but were asked and are very common. And I believe he said that he will make his presentation slides available. We will also have a recording of the video at voicebot.ai/webinars, voicebot.ai/webinars. That should be up in the next couple of days. We will send an email to all the people who registered to let you know when that's live so you can have access to that. I'm Brett Kinsella, founder of voicebot.ai. Roger Kibbe is a senior developer evangelist at Viv Labs and Samsung. Roger, thank you for joining us today. That was a deep dive, and I think it provided some unique information I have not seen shared elsewhere. So I really appreciate you providing that as part of our learning series with VoiceBot webinars.
Well, my pleasure, Brett, and I hope everyone listening enjoyed it. And let's keep the conversation going. I'll send these slides out. Go build something amazing on Bixby. I'd really, really love to see what you build, and we're here to help you build that and then become successful at that.
Thank you. Appreciate everyone staying till the end. Bye-bye.